it wasn't gasoline because they didn't get very good miles per gallon. About 35 or 40 miles is all that 7,000 gallons would take them before they'd have to water up again.
Oh my goodness.
So as you see on the TV show Petticoat Junction, the big water tank, and we got a replica of one down here, they would periodically have those up and down the rail where they wouldn't always be 7,000 gallons of water in them, but they had like windmill power to pump from like retention ponds and things to pump water, or they depended on rainwater. Or I understand some engines even had a pan on them, under them, that would collect rainwater, and as they would go over them, it would scoop it up and bring them into the system. But so, you know, that was probably kind of a problem for them, but they didn't get very far down the track. But the fireman's job was to build a fire, and once they get going, he would sit in this seat, and his job would be to look down through this little aisle for any obstructions on the track. Now the whole tour, you guys got to put yourself back about 100 years in time. Because like I said, this engine was built in 1906. And he may see somebody on horseback, he may see a horse and carriage, he may see somebody on a bicycle or just walking, but if there's any kind of obstructions, his job was to ring the bell. And guess what? Everybody gets to ring the bell that wants to. If they use for civic, you know, stuff like that. Penny a mile. 1 cent a mile is what it cost you. So you could go from like here to Greenville and back for $1. People say that's chump change, but there again, put yourself back 100 years. This car is 109 years old. You may be making $15 a week, so can you afford that dollar to ride up there and rain and take it to Atlanta? They also had a contract with the U.S. Mail Service. They would haul mail in here. They would stop at every little pig path they come through. They'd leave Greenwood, they'd stop at Hodges, Belton, Honeypath, Williamston, Pelzer, Piedmont. Just every place they would go, there'd be a few people get on, a few people to get off, because everybody wasn't going all the way to Greenville. They may just be going to Grandma's house for Sunday dinner. So, you know, they'd be taking a 15-mile trip from here. So let's go in and take a look inside the engine. This is the way they would travel, and everything that you see is as original as possible. Like I say, we're having to redo some of the window frames because they're starting to deteriorate a little bit. And you'll notice along the way, especially in this car and the next car, some of these little gold plaques up here. The Railroad Historical Center falls under the umbrella of the museum downtown. It's a non-profit, and they depend on people's donations to keep afloat. So people have bought these seats in honor or in memory or whatever of loved ones. A few years ago, I got a note in the mail where my wife had bought a seat for me for our anniversary. And she told me, she said, you spent 3/4 of your life on that railroad. I didn't know what else to get you, so I just bought you a train seat. I said, very appropriate. It's in the next car. I'll show you when we get there. But it's Sunday afternoon, and I'm going up to my grandma's house in Honeypath, so I'm riding along in this seat, watching the world go by. The train's running smooth, and everything's cool, and I go see Grandma and have lunch with her and spend a few hours. I get ready to come home. I get back in this same seat, and I'm looking over my shoulder and trying to see where we're going, and got a crick in my neck. And by the time I get home, no, the P&M took care of that. You could sit going or coming there. These little things here, too, I like to bring out that. That's to put your ticket under. So a lot of people would get on the train and it would go, they'd fall asleep. So that when the conductor come by and ticket please, if somebody was nodded off, he'd just pull their ticket out from under that and punch it and wouldn't have to wake them up. Of course, they may wake up 2 or 3 stops down the line there where they didn't want, hey, you passed my stopping point. So when you snooze, you lose there. That's right. To Washington, D.C. as the Silver Comet, it would come back as the Silver Meteor. So it'd go up one day as a comet, come back the next day as a meteor. When I was in the 8th grade here in Greenwood, we had 2 junior high schools, north side up on this end of town, south side down here. And every year, the 8th graders, if your parents could afford the trip, would go to Washington, D.C. I was fortunate enough to get to go. I think, best I remember, $78 jumps into my head as to what it cost us to go. And you know, we saw the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, the Smithsonian, all the, you know, what the sightseers do when they go. But in the 8th grade, I was much too young to appreciate it. It would have been much better had they waited and made it a senior trip, because imagine probably 3 cars like this. What are you in 8th grade? 13, 14 years old? Full of screaming 14-year-olds that had been, this was their first trip for most of us, away without their mom and dad, got a few teachers as chaperones. I'm sure that train crew was glad to get rid of us when we got to Arlington there and then bust into Washington. But they would do that every year, so the crew would earn their money. I don't know how many of you looked at the seats when on that little board when you came in here. But when they acquired this car, when Mr. Adams acquired this car, the seats were just toast. I mean, they were roached out. They could not be fixed. They could not find enough of them to replace the cars. But they did find this material at a place in Spartanburg. And the prisoners down in McCormick, South Carolina, reupholstered these seats for us and did an excellent job, I must say. So I guess they got a shop down, a reupholstery shop where they do stuff like this and, you know, give them self-worth. They can do something besides be a criminal in their life. So I think they did a good job. But everything again, the lights, the floor, black and white tile floors are original. These pull down shades, I mean, all these things are original to these cars. They, you know, just we try to keep them as close to like they were as we can. They would have put ice with milk and juice and things in here to keep it cold. As they would prepare their vegetables and stuff, they would have gone into these pots to keep them warm. Sinks right here. Now you'll notice if I want to get one of the saucers out of here, I got to pick it up and pull it over, because the train's running 70 miles an hour, and when it does, it's rocking back and forth. They go around the curve, they could have been broken glass all over. So the coffee cups down here and the saucers are like that. There would have been a trash can under here where they would have peeled potatoes, peeled carrots, peeled celery or whatever, raked it all in there, and at the end of the line, some old farmer would have probably picked that up and fed it to his hogs. Coffee urns right here, dry ice in that with ice cream, refrigeration. This car, they quickly learned that it was not air conditioned, and with the kitchen being where it is and as hot as our climate is here, this car just was not working for people. So they leased it to the Erie Railroad out west, who later merged with the Lackawanna to form the Erie Lackawanna. I saw a video last year of the United Way when they had their fundraising kickoff. They had all the tables and chairs out of here. And we got a little band here in Greenwood that's kind of famous. They've been around for about 60 years, called the Swinging Medallions. And the Medallions were coming up and down the aisle, playing their guitars and horns and drums, singing, "Get on board the love train." So now a lot of people see this big plexiglass and say COVID. This was way prior to any of us knowing what COVID is. In its origin, this area back here was a lounge. Trash cans and clean bathrooms and things, but they still call them porter's jobs. So we got anybody ready to take a train trip by now? Because we only got 2 cars left to see. Usually by now somebody's ready to call Amtrak and book them a trip there. All right, good. We got one taker there. In the mid-70s, they started weaning those off. They came up with a little computer called a telemetry device that they hang in the drawhead on the rear car. They hook it to the air system, and it sends messages. Train leaves Atlanta with 100 cars. It gets to Athens. The first 10 cars he sets off at Athens because they're for different industries in Athens. I guess if you got a lot of money, you can. That's so there's a few people that
just take a ride or take a trip and don't know where you're going.
That's right.
Wherever you end up.
Hook it on the back end.
That's a milepost. It's just something that they have on the rails, telling, you know, like a highway does. You pass different mileposts.
Cycling is not a common name.
No, it's not. I think I would have remembered that.
Okay, thank you.
That's the plaque I was talking about. That's been, to me, out of all the plaques, the one about the full in the hospitality.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all so much for coming.